Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there. This is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franzi Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franzi Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franzi.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franzi, and this is your backstage pass through the entertainment industry. This week, we get to talk with a musician and an educator. We get to talk with James Rissacher. We'll talk to him about what it was like graduating from SUNY as first chair, the importance of continuous improvement, and we'll discuss how putting a nail through his hand almost ended his career. Now, I have known James for a long time. We've worked together on several projects, and I can't wait to talk with him tonight. So if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jfranzi.com. Now, let's get started. Jim, sir, how are you?
I'm well, and how are you?
I am fantastic. I am so glad you are here.
It's great to be here. It's a pleasure.
Let's go ahead and just jump in if you don't mind.
Sure.
I would like to just start with the simple fact that you are known as a fishing musician. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, one of the things that I do as far as being an entertainer is I have a boat on Lake George, upstate New York, and I perform on the back of my boat. A client might hire me. It could be somebody with a camp. In the past, it's somebody who rented an island. There's quite a few islands in Lake George. And I pull my boat up, and I put the back of the boat towards the shore, and I play music right off the back of my boat and entertain. It's very festive, and we have a good time.
So what kind of boat do you have?
A Carver Mariner. It's a 32-foot cruiser. It's called a yacht on the title. You know, it's kind of
nice.
Yeah, it's comfortable. And then I decked it out with fishing equipment too, and I do a lot of fishing. So a lot of times I'll plan where I'm going and I fish my way over. I troll. And then when I get to the job, I throw the anchors out, get myself ready. I do the job and I say thank you and my part is over. And then I troll and fish my way back to my slip.
Well, that's going to be pretty cool. I mean, first of all, Lake George is awesome.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty cool playing your non-traditional venue like that.
Yes, I enjoy it very much. It's summertime, which is my favorite time to play. It's outdoors. I prefer to play outdoors. It is a beautiful lake. It was voted a couple times the nicest lake in the United States.
So the season itself, how long is the season for you?
Well, it's not very long. June, July, and August, and a little bit of September is the good season. But there is something going on in Lake George year-round. It's just that's the peak season. It'll be in the water this weekend. So it goes in early April. And then the Carver has to come out in early October. However, I have another boat that I can leave in a lot longer. So sometimes I leave it in past Thanksgiving, and sometimes close to Christmas, I'll leave it in.
What kind of setup do you have on the boat to be able to play like that?
Oh, okay. So I use an inverter on the Carver. You have the 12-volt system using two marine batteries, just like a car battery, 12-volt battery. But then I use an inverter, so I invert that 12-volt to 120, And then after that, you just plug in whatever equipment you want. I typically use a couple of Bose speakers, and those speakers actually have batteries built into them. So a lot of times they're already charged up. And then I use like standard effects for my guitar. And then for voice, I just use a little bit of reverb.
I haven't seen it, but I have to see it. So hopefully one time this summer or something, I can head up that way and check it out.
I think that would be great. Anytime you want to go, that would be wonderful.
Well, don't say that because I'll be there all the time.
Wait a minute now. You have 3 children, so
Exactly, Jim. Exactly.
you have limited time. I know that.
That's the reason why I want to get away, sir.
You won't be getting away for long.
All right. Well, let's jump into the music piece a little bit deeper. I mean, I know you've got a serious passion for music. You've been playing for an incredibly long time. But let's start with the college level. I mean, you actually went to SUNY and you graduated first chair. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what the experience at SUNY was like?
Yeah, we're talking SUNY Fredonia. James Rissacher was the guitar professor. He's a great guy. He's still there. I had a wonderful experience. For me, when I got to school, when I was in college, I was very passionate about doing well, playing well. And it's for myself, because the drive for me is to play well for myself because I enjoy it. And I study real hard and I practice a lot, because when the sound comes out and it sounds good, it's very satisfying for me. And that's all the motivation I need. And it propelled me to do well in my studies. I had a great time. I also was composing, and the one professor wanted me to double major as a performance major. He wanted me to be a composition major as well. I decided just to be performance. I like composing, but I don't feel that I have the type of talent to compose in the classical sense. This is classical music I was playing, classical guitar, and the composition would be everything written out in scores. And, I did that for the professor, but it takes a long time for me. Some people can do it a lot faster. I'm talking about writing the music down, writing the scores. It's very time consuming for me. Right. Some people, like I say.
That's going to be pretty cool. I mean, I know working in Nashville for so many years, they use the Nashville number system.
Yeah.
And they chart it right there, bring a singer or songwriter into the studio, and they pick up a guitar and play it. The session leader picks up a pencil, charts it out, hands me the paper. We make copies, hand that out to the musicians in the room, and then 5 minutes later, they're done. But like you're saying, that's not my part of the brain. My part of the brain doesn't want to write down the sheet music. I'd rather be the one pressing the buttons and that type of stuff. I feel much more comfortable doing that.
And you're really good at it. And for me, my forte is actually playing the guitar. But when you say the number system, again, that's more of like a symbol. So you would have a capital 1 or a 2. We're talking Roman numerals.
Right.
And your 2 would be a lowercase 2, like 2 I's with dots on them. And that would mean a minor chord, a 2 minor chord. In classical music, everything would be written on standard notation. So right. You wouldn't have that. You would have a bass clef and a treble clef and everything written out exactly, and all the rhythms written out correctly, which takes a real lot of time for me. Some people, like I said, are just really good at that.
I don't know how. I don't know how anybody could do that fast.
Yeah, and accurate.
No.
Some people can do that. Hey, everybody has a talent, thank goodness for them.
Well, no kidding. You went through the school and you went through for performance, and I've seen you perform on several occasions, and you are by far one of the best guitar players I've ever seen.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, I have to say it, only because we have people listening. But what was the biggest takeaway from school that you were able to apply to your performances later on?
That's a really good question. I think making sure you're prepared before you go into the performance, making sure that you practiced enough and knowing when you've practiced enough. And you can actually practice too much. So there's a line between practicing enough and practicing too much. So you have to figure out what that is for you. For instance, I think everybody can identify with cramming for an exam, maybe in high school or college. You're cramming for a test. You wait the day before and you're like, oh, I got this test tomorrow, I got to cram for it. Well, you're much better off, obviously, if you prepared a week out or 2 weeks out. And it's the same thing with the performance. I think that was a big takeaway for me, to be prepared, knowing how to prepare.
So, again, I've seen you on several occasions and you play in multiple genres. So how do you approach the different genres?
Well, and that's a good question. For instance, so with classical music, everything is written out, every single note, even the volume of the note, the accent of the note, the color of the note, if it's going to be a trebly or bassy kind of note, it's written in there. So that's actually, it's hard in a sense that you have to know how to read music really well. But if you know how to read music really well, it's easy because you know exactly what you're supposed to do. And you can prepare and know what to do. So that's how you prepare when you play classical music. It's all written out right in front of you, and you just have to read the music.
And you're able to sight read it and play it spot on the first try?
No. I usually go through it several times. If it's a hard piece, I go through very slowly, make sure I'm playing the correct notes, double check things, and then after I'm certain I got all the notes, then I work on this tempo, make sure the rhythms are correct. I get to the point where I'm playing all the way through, and then I record and I listen to it, and I listen for the phrasing, the dynamics. It's just like you're speaking when you say a sentence and you have a pause in between sentences, and that's how the music should flow. It should be exciting, just like some people when they speak, they're very dynamic, and you can listen to them speak and they'll tell a story and it sounds really good. And another person might say the same story, but they don't have a dynamic voice. And so the story doesn't sound as good. So two people can play the same exact piece and it can come out very different. So I think listening to it, making sure it sounds exciting is like the final process. And then you play the piece, perform it. And then for other genres, say with jazz music, jazz to me is kind of like a basketball game. You know what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get the ball in the hoop. But when you take the ball out on one end of the court, you don't have an exact idea of where the ball's going to go, who you're going to pass it to, until the other team comes after you. And then the ball goes here and there and around and back and forth. And that's jazz music. The music is going here and there and back and forth. But we have the same goal as to get the ball in the hoop. So you have to be a really good listener when you're playing jazz. You're listening to what's around you. You're being very sensitive to what you're hearing. And you're working with the other musicians if you're playing in a group. If you're playing solo, which I do a lot of solo jazz music, what's important for me is to make sure that my fingers are comfortable. So I make sure I warm up a lot before I play. I do finger exercises, make sure my dexterity, my fingers are feeling well, and that really helps to give a good performance. So that's playing jazz. Other types of music, like country music, well, I think it's really important. Country music, it might not have a lot of chords, so you don't have technically the same kind of difficulty to overcome, but The one thing that country music has, which is really awesome, is it has great sound. The sounds of the guitars and the basses and the drums, the production is absolutely fantastic, I think. So you really have to make sure you're getting a real good sound with what you're doing. And so that's what I work on, make sure the equipment sounds real good, make sure your fingers are working well. Even with rock music, rock is fun to play, but the sound is can be kind of crunchy and distorted, and it's not as crisp in your ear. You can get away with a lot of bad notes.
Yeah, it's got more of a wash to it.
Yeah.
Well, you've worked with so many people. Do you have any collaborations that stand out to you as being, just a step above?
I don't know. I think I'm always looking towards the future. I try not to look back too much, but I try to make each, I wouldn't say day, but I call it like a time period. After a couple months, I like to look back and say, I'm doing something a little better than I was a couple months ago. So I'm always trying to get better. And I think that when I collaborated with other people, I gave it my 100% each time. I thought was great with people I did work with. And I just try to keep going towards the future. And the guitar for me is an endless kind of project that can't be attained. There is no end to it. You just do the best you can with the time you have. And that's what I do.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, working in Nashville gave me the opportunity to meet the best of everybody who's played. It's just different. Things are just different the way people play. And I noticed that even within Nashville, when we're hiring a session player to come in, we very carefully select the guitar player that's going to come in for the session, because some people, play it with a little bit more edge to it, or some people play a little bit more traditional, or some people are really good at just that finger picking stuff. Yeah. And so you pick people based on their specialties. So it's just like anything else. Or like you mentioned earlier, it's like that story. Guitar is nothing but telling a story musically. Who do you want to read that story to you is, I guess, really what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a simple way of putting it. Sometimes I think that people hear a guitarist and they look at the equipment that they have and they say, wow, that equipment sounds great, But you take that same setup and you give it to another person, it sounds totally different. It's in the ears and in the fingertips. It's the way you attack the string. If you're doing it hard, like you said, edgy, you might be scraping the pick. It really makes a big difference physically, how you touch the strings.
I used to say that to my students all the time when I was teaching over at the engineering colleges. Everybody gets so fixated on equipment, and we got to just choose the exact perfect microphone or the exact perfect, preamp and so on. And all that stuff matters. It really does. But it doesn't matter to the extent that most people think it does, because like you're saying, it's in the hands of the musicians. Great musician can pick up a entry-level guitar and make it sound fantastic. Yeah. And you can take an entry-level guitar player and give them the best guitar ever, and it's not going to sound very good. So it really comes down to the hands and the person doing it. And it's the same thing in the engineering world. I mean, yes, it's great if you have the best musician with the best guitar in front of the best microphone, going through the best preamp into the best console. I mean, yes, of course, all that stuff matters. Then you end up with Steely Dan. Yeah. Perfect sounding everything. But it all comes down to the person in their hands. Yeah. But you've had an opportunity to play thousands of shows at this point. I mean, any particular venue at this point that stands out to you?
Well, I would say that outdoors, like Lake George has a nice outdoor theater, a couple of them. Different places in Albany, in Troy, they have these nice outdoor theaters. So my favorite situation is playing outdoors with a little bit of wind. I like just a little bit of air movement because it changes the sound a little bit. It's almost like it's a chorus effect. And for me, when I hear it, it sounds real good, and I really enjoy that type of sound. That's my favorite kind of sound.
That's pretty cool. I would have never thought of that. I know from an engineering point of view, and the very little bit of live shows that I've done on the road, whenever we would play someplace outdoors, it came with a different set of challenges. But I never thought of it from a musician's point of view, just hearing the sound or the tone going through the air sounds different.
Yeah, I really enjoy that sound.
I don't know if you ever had an opportunity to play Red Rock, but Red Rock is a venue that
would be a perfect one.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing outdoors, and whatever you're playing is echoing and ricocheting off those rocks.
Yes.
So
right.
it's a whole different sound to play at that venue than any place else.
Yeah, and again, with just a little bit of wind, not a lot of wind, and if it's dead calm, it sounds good, but I just like a little bit. Does sound a little different, and I enjoy it. And it definitely puts a smile on my face when I'm in that situation.
Well, the different venues, they matter, and it's like anything else. When you play a club venue, or even a large club like Billy Bob's in Texas is a very large honky-tonk style venue. Then you got Red Rock, the outdoor, and then you got arenas that are the hockey rinks that have their own set of challenges. When you're doing your sound check, everything's a hard surface and ricochets. When you've got the crowd in there, it's a soft surface from all the people that are in there, and it deadens the sound. So the sound changes at all times. And that's something from an engineering point of view that we have to constantly keep up with. I didn't really think that the musicians would hear that as much as we hear it out in the crowd.
Well, when I'm playing in that situation, I'm hearing what's on the stage in a slightly different way than what you're hearing out front. You're mixing everything together and making it all glossy and sound balanced. And sometimes on the stage you can walk 5 feet one way or 5 feet the other, and it sounds quite a bit different just walking around. So you stay in your spot, that sounds great, and you can move around when you need to, because you do need to move around when you're performing, because you want to be kind of exciting. And
so how do you adapt to it, or do you?
Well, it's not really completely different, but it's different. You might hear the drums a lot more in one spot, or then you start to hear the bass a lot more. And I think that you have to give your ear time to adjust. It will adjust, but you will find closer to your sound source generally is where you want to be. Everybody's near their sound source. So the bass is near the bass amp. The drummer, he can hear the drums fine. He's sitting right there. And then there's, in-ear monitors and things like that help.
Do you use in-ears?
I have.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer if I don't have to use them. I mean, they are useful. Generally, if I am using them, it's because it's really loud, and I'm trying to control the volume by putting them in. So already it's a situation that I don't particularly like to be in, to be in a situation that's really loud.
Does it help you when you're singing?
I suppose it helps because you can hear yourself better in a loud situation. But I think that I prefer not to have anything in my ear. I also have played, you play with earplugs in quite a bit, and I prefer not to do that. But sometimes you have to because it's loud, and you got to be careful.
But it seems to me as if you had the in-ear monitors in, that you'd be able to hear yourself better, therefore you'd be able to hit the proper pitch better.
Yeah, in general, right. But there's a comfort. It's a little bit uncomfortable to have them in. More comfortable for me not to have them in.
Speaking of comfort, I know you've played with full bands as you play solo gigs. Which do you prefer?
I prefer solo.
Do you?
Yeah, I prefer that. I guess I started playing more solo in the past 15 years.
What kind of challenges come with playing solo?
Well, for me, I like to try to add bass notes in and treble notes. So I try to get a full sound. I'm not strumming a lot when I'm playing solo. I'm not strumming the guitar like this. I'm finger picking, do a lot of finger picking. So I'm picking bass notes with my thumb and treble notes, melody notes. So that makes it challenging, but fun. I enjoy it. There's some Led Zeppelin that I play solo guitar. You can hear how I'm finger picking.
Is that part of what you were talking about earlier when you say you never stop learning, you're always growing, is learning different ways to play and different ways you can add more notes in?
Yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine kind of challenged me. Can you play this on the guitar? And I'm like, yeah, I'll try it, And so I worked out an arrangement and put it on there. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The other thing is, which is really, I think, neat, and I enjoy it, is you don't have anyone to fall back on. You can't look around and say, what do we do? What are we doing now?
Right.
I mean, you're it. And so you have to be really focused. You have to try to get in the zone, really in focused. And I enjoy trying to do that. For me, I'm able to do it. People enjoy what I do solo.
What's the most rewarding moment?
I have to feel good, first of all, when I'm done and I feel I've played well. And then I'm satisfied. But then somebody else will say something and it makes me feel good, I feel like I did a good job. Sometimes I feel I could have played better. I could have been more prepared. But I still have played okay, and people are happy and they're completely satisfied. But I know that the week leading up, I spent time doing X, Y, and Z, and I should have been practicing a little bit more and preparing.
I think of that like when doing stand-up, you tell a joke and it still goes over and people still laugh, but there's a difference when you go up there and you tell a joke and you hit it right on the money.
Your phrasing is good, and it rolls out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I mean, being a competent player, you're able to go up and make your way through any performance, but there's a difference between making your way through a performance and nailing a performance.
Right, exactly. Yep, I can make my way through. It's nice, and it's nice connecting with people. And that's the other thing when you're a solo performer. Sometimes you're in a group, people are talking, they come up and talk, and they're talking to the whole group. But when you're just by yourself, it's a one-on-one discussion, and you have some nice moments.
Any of those that you can share?
People say things, that make me feel good that I can bring them happiness through music. They'll say how they enjoyed how it made them feel, and that makes me happy. Comments like, you play like I breathe. That's a very flattering comment. People will say, it makes me happy hearing you. When I hear you play the guitar, I can listen to it all day. It moves me and it makes me feel good.
I know you've paid me earlier to say all those nice things about you, but I will say that you do have a way of playing the guitar. But with all the different genres and the different shows, is there any genre that you like playing better than others, and any place that you would like to play that genre of music?
And that's a great question. And for me, I like to play classical guitar in the church. To me, it just sounds outstanding. The acoustics, fantastic.
You mentioned that. It makes me think of Ocean Way in Nashville. one of the biggest studios in Nashville. It used to be a church.
Nice.
Huge control room, but the live room is huge. It's where they actually had all the pews, and we've had like full orchestras out there. I mean, it's a beautiful sounding place.
Yeah. And so that would be my favorite to play, classical guitar, which would be at a low volume. You get a set of drums in there, it's going to not work very well, But for classical guitar, my favorite kind of place.
Now, outside of classical music, let's say when you're playing rock or country, how much do you prefer to improvise?
Quite a bit. I was playing with a country group a few years back, and the lead singer said to me one day, he said, "You play that different like every time in that section." And he said that in a couple songs. And I go, "Yeah, well, I just try to, make it interesting." I go, "Is it bad?" He goes, "No, it sounds cool and everything. It's just I noticed it's always different."
You talked earlier about constant improvement. Can you tell us what that routine looks like for you?
Well, the most basic way is technically trying to develop dexterity, doing arpeggios and scales, doing finger picking patterns. And for me, I'll do a finger picking pattern that is uncomfortable for me, and I try to make it really comfortable. So that's a technical aspect. The other way I try to do it is I'll pick a song, and then I will arrange it, and I'll make it difficult on purpose. I'll try to figure out how I can add extra notes here and there. I do that a lot with jazz tunes. I've done it recently. I've recorded a couple. I recorded Giant Steps, which is a notoriously a hard tune to play in the jazz idiom. But I do it on solo guitar. I did Foggy Mountain Breakdown a few weeks back on solo guitar, my own arrangement. I listened to a few arrangements and decided I'll come up with my own arrangement, and I thought it came out pretty well. A lot of people liked it, and that propelled me to a different level.
Do you ever use technology to assist in the inspiration to try something new?
Well, that is a good question there. Putting yourself in a situation that makes you want to play. So if you have a guitar that sounds really good, or you go to the store and you play a bunch of guitars, and you pick out the one that when you play it, it feels good and it makes you want to play it. So I think that's a good way to start, making sure you have an instrument that fits you well and it'll make you want to play it.
Well, I noticed you're playing a different guitar these days. What kind of guitar is that?
It's a Yamaha called the Silent Guitar, and it's a nylon string. It's like a classical scale, fretboard, and uses nylon. So you can get them with steel strings. I prefer the nylon string for my particular type of playing that I'm mostly doing. And that one works very well for me.
So you, sir, you've played for an awful long time at this point. Have you had any setbacks?
Yeah. I think I've had two that were pretty, well, I think three. But this one I had, I never told the professor at the university, but it was in the summer going into my senior year, and I was the top chair playing in the school, and I was playing softball with no glove on. The ball hit the tip of my finger, and my finger turned all purple, and I couldn't practice for a few months, and it was pretty bad. I remember I went back to school and I was playing something, and he looked at me and he goes, "I thought you were better than that." And it took me a while to get up to speed. Another, I don't know, probably 6 weeks and working it. And that was kind of a funny thing that happened. I never told him what happened. But two other ones. One is I live in upstate New York, and I have a wood lot where I live, and I burn wood to heat with. I actually one of the things I did. It's a wood lot, so I cut down the trees and I built my house out of the trees, which is kind of unusual. Not a lot of people do that. When I was building my house,
Not people who make a living with their hands.
it's something I really wanted to do. My brother Joe's in construction. Your family's in construction, right? Your dad?
Yes, sir.
And it was something I was compelled to do. I really wanted to do this. So I had a nail gun and I was on a ladder and I was falling off the ladder and I reached to get myself and I put the nail through my hand. It was a 3.5-inch nail and it went into the wood and now I'm stuck on the ladder and I couldn't get down. And my neighbor was there. He said, I'm stuck, and he got a hammer and he pulled the nail out. And thankfully that was not a big problem.
It missed bones.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Lucky man.
So, yeah, that was not bad. And then I think the other thing is splitting wood. One time I hurt my wrist pretty bad, and that one took a long time to recover. I couldn't really practice for almost a year.
So does that mean a year without gigs as well?
No, I played, but it hurt, and I didn't play up to the standard that I should have been playing.
Wow.
I would lay back and play a little less. And it's one of the things where I couldn't prepare because it would hurt too much. And then eventually I talked to a couple doctors and whatnot, and eventually it's fine. I don't even notice it anymore. Thank you.
I was going to say, how scared were you?
For me, playing the guitar it's almost like a therapy for me. It's good for my mind. It makes me settle down and be focused. And with not being able to practice is kind of mentally, it messes with me, It's like, I really need to do this and wasn't able to. So it's really great to be able to practice. I practice quite a bit, there's many times I'm compelled to learn something or do something a certain way, and I'm, like you with the recording, you're up all night, and all of a sudden you realize it's really early in the morning, and you feel great because you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. It's a passion, right?
Of course. So what was going through your mind when all that was happening to you?
Am I going to recover? Am I going to be able to play like I used to play? Because when something happens physically, there's a huge difference in your dexterity after a few months. For somebody who plays all the time, and then a couple months later you don't play and you go to play something, it's just, you feel it. Your ability degrades tremendously.
Well, you said it took about a year for you to recover. That year must have been horrible.
It was tough.
Did you think you were going to recover from it? Fully recover from it?
I didn't allow myself to think I wasn't going to recover. I believed I was going to. Maybe I wouldn't have, but I believed I would. Tried to be real careful with what I did during that time period. I wore a brace. I was told to wear a brace and whatnot, and I was careful what I did with my left hand, my left forearm. So everything worked out.
Lucky man.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, we do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a moment to shine the light on somebody who works behind the scenes or somebody who may have supported you along the way. Do you have anybody you would like to shine a little light on?
I have a brother, Joe, and he passed away a couple years ago. He was a real sweet person, beautiful, and he was very supportive. When I went to college, he was funny. He was really proud, and he was like, go get him. You could do a good job and whatnot. But Joe Rissacher, he's a great guy, had a construction business. And then I have a sister who passed 3 years ago, Linda Ashline, Linda Rissacher. And she was like a sister and a mother at the same time. Very supportive. and just a wonderful person. And I think it makes me feel good to talk about them and dedicate how they helped me, and how much I appreciate them.
A big thanks to James for taking the time to share his stories with us, and thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. I know I've said it before, but I will say it again. I really do appreciate it. If you know any other music fans that would enjoy this episode, please be sure to pass this along. You can do that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jfranzi.com/episode 65. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franzi Show. Make sure you visit us at jfranzi.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.